there's a real problem with banking and insurance complaints. It's a fraud. No, it wasn't a fraud. It took me ages to solve it.
You have a complaint at the moment, whatever.
We think there's opportunity there to use AI.
It kind of worked.
Just type in what happened, as short as a one-liner to say, yeah, I tried to get some money out of the bank and it didn't dispense any cash.
It was like 5. Yeah, we'll have to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Welcome back to another episode of That Backyard Property Pod. Today is a little different and I'm super excited and curious as well. Today we have the founders of Womby, Dan and Jon, in today. Welcome.
Thanks, you.
Man. Yeah, cheers.
It's awesome to have you. And it's funny, we've been obviously connecting the last sort of 15, 20 minutes and hearing the stories already and the reasons and everything behind Womby is so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fairly boring niche space that we've picked, but something that's really unloved, I think, more than anything else. And we saw it when I called Jon last year. I said, do you want to do something together? And it was something where Jon and I we'd worked together for a number of years, and then I think we'd had a few years apart. And we were always we're good friends, and we'd call each other every now and then to go, oh, how are we ever going to work together? And then I had a problem with my bank, which I won't name, but and I was in a dispute with them over something, and it was cardless cash. So I was down south with friends, and I needed to get money out from an ATM. I didn't have my wallet. Who carries a wallet? Used the phone, punch the codes in. No money came out. And I just sat there dumbfounded going, when does that happen? It's ridiculous. It's like a movie. It was making the noises, and I sat there. It was like half midnight at Margaret River, and I was like, I don't think I'll get my money. And then I was like, I'm not going to try it again because I'm not that daft. So I waited the next day. Anyway, I checked my banking as I woke up, and then the money had been debited. So I was like, oh, I'll sort it out when I get back to Perth. And then when I got back, I contacted the bank, and then got the inbox message, said, yeah, we're going to look at it. And time passed, and nothing happened. And I forgot. And then I remember it was about, that was in March. And then I called Jon around June, July, and I was like, hey, I've been spending hours Googling this stuff. And
went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I just went down I put the alfoil hat on, went down the rabbit hole. I said, I think there's a real problem with banking and insurance complaints. We talked about it, and then we thought we'd just have a go. So
like that scene from The Big Short.
There's something really wrong. Because that's it. It's a fraud. No, it wasn't a fraud. It was. We just knew there was some. It was a massive issue. It took me ages to work out what to do, and the mere fact that you've just got to go through these really old forms. So it just looked like nothing had disrupted the dispute process in a bank. Yeah. And I went looking at the insurers and all the rest, and they all had the same forms. It's all online forms, GPO box. You can actually send them a letter, which is crazy because I think someone else who was on your podcast, Catherine, had a dispute with her bank, and she said she was walking around with a letter, an envelope and a letter in her handbag for about 3 to 4 months, maybe longer. I think she'd probably correct me if I was wrong, because she just couldn't find a stamp. I was like, you know who loves that? The bank loves it. They love it. They love that you don't have stamps. So, so we've come up with this a new way to deal with complaints.
Yeah, financial complaints that people, unless you have a complaint at the moment, you're probably like, oh, whatever. And then as soon as you're in that position where you need to chase something up, you're like, hang on, what do I do? How do I do this? And I imagine there wasn't anything that you could find of an actual course of action or next steps to take.
But I think there's a bit of both. There's either nothing or too much. And so there's no middle ground there. Jon's spent how much time in Reddit finance, our finance?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, I think it's a good source of information. Yeah. I suppose, but also very hard to find anything that's remotely similar to your specific situation. Because there might be a couple of complaints or issues that people have been talking about, which are adjacent or kind of similar, but they're not quite the same. So you never
know what the outcome is.
No, and you've got to do the research to go, oh yeah, my situation's the same for the first bit, but then later on it's not. So what do I do now?
The outcome's the key part, though.
Of course it is, yeah, and that was the clincher for me. So when I was digging, and then I went to AFCA, which is the Financial Complaints Authority, their website. So they're the ombudsman, the sort of referee, if that's probably the best way to describe them. So if you have an issue with a bank or an insurer or any sort of financial service provider, you go through the initial dispute process where you complain to them, and you don't get the outcome you want, you can go to AFCA, and they're an independent body, but they're a sort of user pay system. So as a consumer, you don't pay for it. The bank or the insurer who you're in dispute with will pay for it. And no one really knows this. So it's one of those, it's a lever that customers have that they don't really have an awareness of. But going through that process and looking at their website, they had these determinations, and these are just decisions that they've made in the past. And that was the first time I actually went, oh, wow, that's really interesting, like a fly on the wall, getting to see what had happened when someone had a complaint. And I was like, oh, dirty laundry. Like, it's literally that. It's like, oh. And I started looking for my bank and a couple of the insurance company I was with, and then I could see that they had it clearly laid out. Lots of effort had gone into it to capture the core issues, the decision that was made, why the decision was made, what made it fair. This is a really useful thing. And so boring that I couldn't post about it on social media because someone would think I was a crank.
And publicly available.
Yeah. But it's that, we've talked about it. It's that it's there, but you can't really access it because you didn't even know how many files they had. Literally, you've just got to, and you have to hit the right keyword. It's really technical, so you have to know this very specific product that you have a problem with, down to the nth level of detail. And it doesn't tell you if any, like you can't see when the search results come up which was successful, which was unsuccessful. So I just started thinking, and the brain was turning, and I picked up my phone. I was like, John, I think we might have something.
And because we were using AI a lot in just our roles and playing around outside of work, and the models like a year a bit ago, they were good. They'd come a long way even in the 8 months or so since they started to kind of hit mainstream. But we were like, the rate at which all of these models and stuff are coming out and they're improving, we were like, well, we think there's opportunity there to use AI to, we were like, well, what if we just chuck some of this stuff in? Well, let's see what comes out. Yeah. Chucked it in the washing machine, see what comes out. And then
we tried it. We just started a new GPT because we had a subscription, and then we uploaded a few documents and then just asked it questions, and we're like, oh my God, this is really good.
It kind of works.
This is really, it kind of worked. It kind of worked. It kind of worked.
It
was good enough.
As well.
It proved the first thought, which was if you put it here, ran something like an AI model over the top of it, would it answer some basic questions, summarize the documents, and it did the first thing that we thought it would do. But then we thought, okay, well that was 2 files. It was 28,000 of them. Let's upload them. That's the level of knowledge we had last year, and then that obviously didn't work. But having said that, we had to also extract the files. We had to find a way to do it. So we did that. So we built something that allowed us to just very slowly but surely just capture all the files. We worked out that they were sitting on a public-facing website. They're PDFs with the file name there sitting there, and so we technically were able to sort of pull them down one by one.
So every single AFCA complaint for a period of time?
Not all of them. So the determination is the last, from what our understanding is sort of that last mile. So you to get to a determination decision panel is you've gone through a long, sort of a longer process, and then that's when an ombudsman is appointed to actually just now oversee it and provide the final decision. So that 28,000 files is over how many years? Maybe 8 years or so, something like that. And they release them half yearly. So the last 6 months of last year were about 2,500 decisions that came out, and they span everything. Banking, insurance, superannuation, all the big ones. So our view was over that period with all those decisions, that should cover it. I think that was it.
It's a pretty good sample.
That's a good sample size to cover most of the problems that people would have. And then to validate that, we went and looked at some of the reports from ASIC, which said, well, what are the typical complaints people have? And they're mostly general insurance and transaction banking. That's a majority. There's this long, the bell curve is all stacked with those two, and then there's a very long tail of other small issues and edge issues. But for the most part, it's incorrect transfers, service-related issues, premium increases, failure to pay claims, or there's common ones in there, the common things people face. And so we thought, okay, well, if we've got that, and that's most of the issues that people have, then how do we do the rest? So that was sort of, we'd done lots of research, and then I think it was around December last year, and John just calls, goes, I'm just going to have it. Why don't we just do it? And so why don't we just build it?
Yeah.
And so what did we have to lose? It was the Christmas holidays. We're probably sick of seeing our kids on holidays. No, it wasn't that. It was just post Christmas, and then I think John just calls and goes, let's just do it. And that's
when it was born. Womby was born.
Pretty much, yeah.
How did you come up with the name? What does the name represent?
It's short name, which is easy to remember.
Yeah, we needed to be like hip and trendy. Yeah, we needed to bring some fun, and
we like wombats, and they're pretty cute. But they're iconic Australian animal, determined, resilient, and they're really good at digging. And they've got a strong rear end. So they've got the perfect anatomy for someone who's going to make a complaint. They'll just dig and dig and dig, and they're an amazing sort of strong Australian animal that's cute and unassuming, and fast. And so we thought, that's a good spirit animal for this product, which is to get fast analysis of a complaint using AI. And sort of embody that as sort of determined spirit.
It works. Yeah. Absolutely works. Yeah. But then how do you use it? How would someone use it? Say you've got ATM, money withdrawal doesn't come out. Yeah. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, essentially at the moment, you can just go to our website, and then just start the process. So say, yep, I've got a banking complaint. We'll ask you a couple of questions, just to kind of get some context around it. But really, just type in what happened. It can be as short as a one-liner to say, I tried to get some money out of the bank, and it didn't dispense any cash.
But we do ask them questions so we try and we do want to collect data on complaints. So we're careful about, we don't ask you who you are. That's a really important thing, is that right now we have no purpose for that. We don't need to know who you are. We just need to know that you have an issue. So the stats that have driven us are the fact that 1 in 2 people who have a legitimate complaint don't make one. So that tells you the state.
1 in 2.
1 in 2. So it's 1 in 2. Yeah, and that's an ASIC. ASIC had a report in about 2019 which said that this was the case, that just almost half of people, and they called them considerers. That's what they referred to them as, because they're just sort of considering, sitting on the fence, are just going, look, I reckon I've got a problem, but I can't be bothered.
I was about to say more like couldn't be bothered.
And it's normally, and there's so many,
probably had to play
there's so many blockers to
diplomatic.
that. There's so many blockers to that which are don't think it's going to work. Just I'm set up to fail. The sort of verbatims they took from their survey were pretty hard going. But so in that sense, we do collect the information about the complaint itself. Who is it? What was lost, when did it happen, and specifically, what are the outcomes you're seeking? So we want to know the sort of the two sides of the complaint, which is, I've got a problem, this was a specific issue with my product, and I expect this as a resolution. A lot of people get that wrong, and we're banking on the fact that a lot of people get that wrong because they phone to make a complaint. 70% of people call when they make a complaint, and I don't think they're prepared. They're just angry. Like, I'd say that's about right. You're annoyed. And you probably don't meet the criteria of a complaint when you call, because you're like, this happened, I'm annoyed, what are you going to do about it? Well, technically, that's not a complaint. You have to say, I would like the following in terms of my issue to provide redress to me. I want this. And then it's down to the person on the phone who has to listen and then interpret that as a complaint. So it's entirely possible, humans are humans. It's entirely possible that you would say complaints get misclassified. ASIC did their own investigation into this, and 1 in 6 insurance complaints were not complaints. Apparently, what should have been complaints were not classified as complaints. Because of
the person misclassifying,
the systems and training issues. So for us, we just try and make sure that what we are capturing is a complaint, because we're asking people to fill these things in, and what they're filling in is fairly easy. but it's useful to us because it gives us a really good picture of what's going on. So and then once they've done that, they hit submit, and then
that's it. And then in a minute, they've essentially got some really contextualised results based off what AFCA has seen in the past, and
those results must, I'm assuming, would also then have the outcomes of those complaints.
Yeah. So because we've split all of that up in our system, we can tell you out of the 15 that are brought back, there were 7 of them that were successful or had a positive outcome. And so we can go into the detail to say, well, out of those ones that were successful, what were the traits or what were the characteristics common with those ones? And then, it's kind of up to the user then. I think it puts them in a better position to go, well, hang on, these line up pretty well with what's happened with my scenario. So,
and we give them a link back to the file at AFCA's website. So, because it's an AI-driven system that's using AI analysis over the top of what they've written, we've got to maintain that sort of circle of transparency and trust. So, because it says something on the screen, it's entirely possible because I don't know if that's made up. I mean, if people talk about hallucinations all the time. So we make sure that you can now verify what's written by going straight to that link. It opens the file, another tab, and you can see immediately that what it's summarised there for you is the exact complaint that we've been talking about. So we've taken what was hours, could be potentially hours and hours and hours of research into seconds and in deep context of what your problem is.
Yeah, well, I find one of the things that I pick up on is that the most powerful thing for me is you are empowering someone to be confident in making that call. Yeah. So, and I find this very similar in line of work when someone calls and says, my interest rate is X, what should it be? Because they don't actually know what it should be.
Yeah.
But as soon as you tell them what the outcome, they can call that bank and say, I know my rate should be this. And the discussion is then really clear because the person knows the outcome, as you said, and so all of a sudden you know what that complaint, the outcome was. Is that what you're hoping to achieve? Yes. Okay.
So and that is the core of what we're trying to do, is to give people clarity, reduce the amount of time they spend in dispute, and hope that this is a way for them to move forward and actually provide actual clarity to their bankers or insurer or whoever their provider is as well, and say, hey, listen, I had this problem. This is the outcome I'm seeking, and there have been decisions in the past where this has happened, and that happened with one of our, someone we knew.
Yeah. He'd been in talks with the banks for I think it was about 7 or 8 weeks after transferring some money to the wrong account.
And that's a common thing, right?
Yeah, it must be super common. Getting. I mean,
you can.
Why wasn't he using Pay ID for starters? I don't know, but
it's like sending a text to the wrong person.
Send a text to the person you were talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And then you actually transfer them to $2,000. Whoops.
Well, there must be a common theme with these complaints that you see.
I mean, banks still do have that sort of they obviously do have validation to say that account number. They had to do that recently, where they say that the account name and the account you've provided don't match. Well, but it's within your discretion to do that, and that's the crux of it, is to say, well, we showed you that, you still went ahead. But
I think that's a get out of
jail.
Get out of jail.
Because if you report quickly enough, if you report it as soon as it happens, that improves your chances. So you call up straight away and say, this has happened, and there is a time window in which things can happen or steps can be taken.
I think you got to be realistic. You can't say, transferred money last year to the wrong account and I want it back.
I really don't like this person anymore. I really don't think I should.
I'm siding with the bank on that one. You've left it a bit long, mate.
We're not friends anymore. Look, I gave them money for their birthday.
But he was telling me we were watching our kids at swimming, and we were just kind of chatting away and asking, what we'd been up to, and I was explaining to him that we had literally, I think it was the week before, we had hit the go live button, and I was kind of talking him through what we'd done and what it was capable of, and I was like, here, I'll show you an example. And so I was stepping through the process, and I was trying to come up with an example. I was like, here, you can just put in a banking thing, and he's like, oh, no, I've got one.
I've got a live one.
So you put it in, so that he transferred money to his sister, and wrong account number, He called his sister up and said, hey, yeah, the money should be in your account. She goes, oh, no, it's not there. Well, what account number did you send it to? And
it was
read
like
it out.
555.
Yeah, 555.
Yeah.
And so she was like, no, that's the last digit's wrong. So he straight away called the bank. So it must have been about 5 or 10 minutes after the thing, after he transferred the money.
So how many weeks was he in?
7?
7 weeks. That's when
like
you spoke to him.
Yeah.
He was into week 7 now.
Oh, so he had called them straight away.
Oh yeah.
So
He'd let them know.
And they said, well, we have to wait for the money to land in the other person's account before we can try and scrape it back. And so he had a nervous couple of days waiting for the phone call from the bank. And long story short, whoever's account it landed in, they were just like, they pulled it straight out, and that was that. And so he was just kind of left, with nowhere to go. And the bank, at the end of it, they basically just said, oh, look, yeah, we recommend you probably get some legal advice if you want to take it further. But sorry, there's nothing we can do to help.
I think in theory, they should have suggested, I'm sure they would have suggested he went to AFCA, which is the right step for him to go to the Ombudsman.
Maybe they did,
Yeah, and I think, post AFCA, you have to go, you can take legal advice if it doesn't work out through AFCA. But, I mean, you pulled up the results on the phone.
Yeah, literally.
On Womby.
So we over the space of a couple of minutes, the thing came back, and we were looking at some of the similar cases, and I was like, oh, here, look, this one here. Literally, it looked like it was his thing, like that had gone through, but it was.
I'd imagine it'd be a fairly common mistake.
So he screen clips. He goes, oh, can I screen clip those? And I think I don't know if we had we could distribute the analysis at that point. I don't think we had, or maybe
no, we did. Yeah.
We did. Oh, so there you go.
So it had the saved link there, and he called the bank, I think, on the Monday, and said, hey, just on that complaint, I'm really not happy with the outcome, and I'm happy to escalate it to AFCA, because I know if you refer to this similar case here, that the same thing's happened in the past. And
he said, I'd used a website to find this.
Yeah.
They were like,
they were like,
which website's that?
What's Womby?
Yeah.
And he was like, the same thing. So transferred to the wrong account number, but this person had kind of argued that, well, the person's name was correct, and why was there no check on the person's name as well as the bank account? And I think that's what the crux of the complaint was about for them, and they managed to get a settlement with the bank. And so
they did settle with it.
In that case, so he was armed with that. He was like, so what's up? And
was it a day later?
No, I'm pretty sure it was the same call. I think it was like, I'll just speak to my manager.
And came back and they settled.
They made a settlement. So
we don't know how much.
I don't think it was the full amount, but I think
But it was better than telling him to go away.
That's so much better.
And it took him zero effort.
Yeah.
But how much more confidence did he have making that call and going, refer to reference A?
Yeah, and that was it. And he couldn't believe his luck that he didn't even know that it existed. So this is the consumer problem, is that customers and Australian banking, insurance, finance consumers do not know that these precedents exist. We've highlighted an awareness to them. The ones that do know, interestingly, we released an article today on LinkedIn about this, are middlemen. So there's third parties, claims management firms who do this for you helpfully, but they're there because they know this. They know AFCA has precedents, and they just know insurance and banking rules around disputes. But ABC wrote an article like this a couple of weeks ago highlighting this, that they're charged, they're saying buyer beware. And these companies are charging 30 to 40% success fee, so no win, no fee. It's a bit of an ambulance chaser model. We don't like it. I mean, we completely resist that model, and we were no way going to engage in it. We do, Womby will eventually become a commercial service, but we're picking the very, very high friction point, which is initiating it, and initiating it with real, meat behind it, which is the here's my issue, here are the outcomes I'm seeking, here are the precise precedents that match my issue, and I'm expecting a response from you. and it takes them no effort and energy. I mean, if you've ever written that hard email to somebody that you need a cup of tea afterwards because of the stress it puts you through to write that thing, but we're saving them all of that and just going, this thing's going to do it for you, nice and clear. These ones are really favourable for you, and that's what we're technically working on at the moment. So we've seen that sort of middleman sort of model, which is taking in full advantage of the fact that people don't know that there's free services available. I mean, there are consumer credit support groups, etc., who do this, and provide these sort of support advice for people for nothing. So not that we want to diminish what there's in the gap between the problem and the solution, there is commerciality, right? That's the truth of it. It's why mortgage brokers exist, right? So that's and there's nothing wrong with that. We just think that sort of percentage is fairly egregious. I think that's probably too much, especially when you've already gone in with some financial hurt.
And emotional hurt generally.
Yeah. So we just think it's way too much to take, and we think that there's a way to do this at scale, where we can get a commercial outcome, and we can solve that problem fairly quickly, and do it for everyone.
And the amazing thing is that just the use of AI through that process. And John and I were talking earlier that there's so many other areas in our lives that have the same slow process of not getting the right outcome that you want, that could be explored as well.
Oh, so many boring things.
So many.
I mean, that's sort of what John and I used to do at work, as we'd look at something, it was a horrendous process and go, ugh. And John would just send me vomit emojis and just go, this is crazy that anyone has to do this. Yuck. Yeah. And, now it's sort of like we just go, oh, that's an opportunity.
Yeah, it is an opportunity.
So I just smell that. Smell opportunity.
The part that I really enjoy is the fact that everyone in today's day and age is kind of looking for that new idea, that light bulb moment of when will it happen and what will it be. And you literally had one because you went through something that was average, which seems to be the common occurrence. About you go through something and you go, that could be done better. Bang, let's do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's that. This is where these are the opportunities for AI, areas where it's just hard. And it's because it's always been that way, or there's no way forward, or there's a resourcing issue is the problem. And now AI presents this opportunity where perhaps resourcing is not the pinch point. I mean, AFCA hired 500 extra people for caseload, and that's because the whole process does require a lot of human interfacing and all the rest. The question is, if that's the issue, like that can't scale. That how would you deal with another double caseload? You wouldn't be able to hire people fast enough. So I think every business is looking for those sort of opportunities to alleviate themselves of things that were notoriously difficult.
Yeah, but you're also making it easier for AFCA in a lot of ways. They're not needing to engage in this process.
We would. I mean, it's a crazy funnel, right? We were saying this on the phone this morning that the math wasn't. The math
is a mathing, yeah.
The math is mathing. I mean, you get. ASIC had. They said there were 4.5 million disputes last year across all firms, and only about 90,000 end up at AFCA, which is like 2%. 2% end up at AFCA. So, but 70% somehow magically are resolved on the same day. How? But not all of the. And the classification of those, and it doesn't tell. Well, that was the other thing we said, was it doesn't tell you whether you were happy.
No, yeah, that's I think one of the biggest ones with all of these, that 70%. Like, okay, but how did the customer feel walking away from that? Where
did they get the outcome they wanted? Like, did they call up for something, and then the issue was the complaint as a case was closed on that day? What does that mean for the customer? And they don't report that, so no one. ASIC is not asking for that. They may have it in their data, but they haven't published it, so you don't get a sense of whether the outcome that was asked for was met in closing it, or even partially. So while it was a great thing that they published all the internal disputes, sort of a high-level overview of the data, it doesn't tell you anything. And that's the role that we want to play at Womby, is we want to be able to publish that sort of, these are the types of things people face. So be a smaller version of these AFCA determinations and just say, obviously not some of the we talked about before we started recording. We started talking about some of the crazy stuff we've seen come through. So of course, with modicum of sort of data quality and assurance that we would ultimately like to share with other people who've had who've made a complaint, these are some other issues that people have faced, so that they know that they're not alone. And if we can, close that loop to say, well, if you've run a process with us, you've sent off a letter, have you had a successful outcome, and how do we follow people up without chasing them down with emails and all the rest? So we'd love to be able to show that there's a really a virtuous circle of, hey, if you do this, that you're successful. We're banking an idea that just being prepared, this is our hypothesis at the moment as a business, is we think that being prepared is the first step. And we're prepared to test that, and we're going to put something towards that.
Yeah, completely agree. And what are some of those classic themes or types that you're seeing
at the moment?
Yeah,
I think flooding seems to be pretty popular at the moment. Roof kind of claims, things like that in Queensland,
which tells us that people from around the country. I mean, we're just a lowly startup in Perth, but that's interesting because they go, oh, I don't think there's been a tropical cyclone in Perth. So we go check when the last weather event was, and we noticed it was on the other side of the country. So that's great.
But yeah, roof claims, financial planning. There's been a couple around that.
Because of bad advice or high fees or something?
I think, the few that we've seen have been around poor advice and essentially people being taken advantage of that might not be, I think, clued up. I think there was one we saw from, I think it was someone's mother that, I think they'd passed away, and then as they were kind of going through a lot of their, the financial documents and things like that, they basically found out that, this financial advisor was investing on all of these companies that were owned by the same person or something like that. Really kind of dodgy stuff.
These are all really hard issues that people are facing, like the water ingress in their home. When they've been dragged through it. And things have just taken so long. So, we do ask these questions. We ask them if they're considering making a complaint, have already made one, or they're ready to make one. So we ask them some pre-qualifying things that just sort of get a sense of where they're at. We have a little emoji mood meter as well to work out what their mood is in, because nobody really knows the mood of people. Are they hopeful, or are they completely defeated, angry?
Or are they fiery red?
Yeah, the fiery red. We haven't got the flame emoji. We did think about putting a poop emoji
got the really
in there.
Grumpy looking face.
Yeah. That's right. There's no rainbows in there or anything like that. There's no one that's that optimistic. So generally speaking, people are not in a great. If we looked at our data, we'd say that for the most part, most people are not in a happy state. Generally sort of confused by the whole thing. And then we do ask them on when they download their analysis from us, we ask them if we'd save them time and if they were better off, and the data's telling us that people have saved hours and have more clarity than when they started the process 3 minutes ago. And that's a really great marker for us, is to say, well, at least we've done one thing, which is to help them move a little bit further forward.
3 minutes ago as well.
Yeah. So 3 minutes earlier. 3 minutes earlier. Yeah, it's not like we've spent hours on the phone with them. They haven't had to call nobody calls anyone anymore. It's a whole hassle to just pick up the phone and sit on hold and then explain your issue to someone, and then have them come back to you. That's the worst part. Is that okay? Thanks for telling us that. Look, we'll come back to you in a few days. Like, I want to know now. Everything is now. So if we can, these are hugely complex issues, and we feel like this is the game changer, as you can find out fairly quickly, and we're making good use of freely publicly available data in a way that makes sense for consumers.
Absolutely. And you're going through, in that case, they're probably grieving for their family member that's just passed, or in the flooding case, their house might have been completely flooded, so they're trying to find a new home for them and their kids, and so they're going through something turmoil already.
Absolutely, there's financial suffering happening at the moment. They are literally out of pocket, and they're trying desperately to get their money back, to have a claim honoured, to retrieve money from an incorrect transfer.
Superannuation, I think, is the topical one at the moment. With all of the delays that seem to be going on in the release of people's superannuation. I think Australian Super was singled out in something this morning about 4 years. Like, stuff taking really ridiculous amount of time to process, and like
because there's go on.
Well, yeah, I'm just like, why? Like, how? What? How and why? And is there something? Surely there's something that could be happening in between to help drive things along.
And it's only when ASIC will sue them
Yeah.
that something might come out. So Choice, as a customer advocacy group, has done I think they're calling it a super complaint, where not superannuation, but like a super as in enormous. They have solicited for people who are impacted by a certain issue and then sent that in, submitted that as a singular complaint to sort of ACCC, I think, or one of the regulatory bodies. But that's what it's taking at the moment, is they need volume. They're coming in and saying, hey, we represent all these people, as opposed to a class action. So it's sort of like it's for complaints, what class action is to law. And we feel like if we maintain some regularity around that and make that nice and visible, then we would keep those groups honest. The biggest issue that everyone faces is that the data that's going to ASIC is all self-reported. Self-reporting is like marking your own homework, and marking your own homework.
Or marking your own pub quiz.
I can tell you how I'd mark my own homework if I was in school, then notable in last year's about 5,000 firms reported having no disputes, none. And, we've said this before.
Good.
A lot of dogs eating a lot of homework, so 5,000
no
complaints.
No
No comments reported whatsoever. I find that hard to believe when you're dealing with money, like that you haven't, that has, unbelievable, but probably I'd love to see how many have had no complaints and not won a CanStar award. So we'll draw that Venn diagram, because that would be interesting. But I think that it points to, and also first go, right? So this is the first time firms have had to report their disputes. So, our institutions, we've worked in them. We know what it's like. It's hard to get this data together. And we have that understanding that from the inside, that getting aggregated views on disputes, if you've got hundreds of products, could be a problem, because there could be multiple systems that deal with mortgage issues or transaction banking or credit cards, and there'd be staff that look after those systems. They may not all be the same thing. So the assumption always from the outside in is there's some unified system inside this bank that has a quarterly profit of $5 billion, that they possibly have this together. I don't think that's true. I think it's the poor cousin. It definitely is. I've said this before. The back end of banking is not the front end. It's different. It's the caboose. It doesn't get the bells and whistles and all the shiny polish. It's still got people on phones dealing with emails and letters who are triaging, and probably I feel for them. If every day on the phone was just dealing with grumpy customers, it'd be a really tough day at the office.
Without being able to find a resolution for
straight away.
Yeah.
You know that satisfaction comes from solving problems. It's one when people work on claims, and able to pay claims or honour claims in insurance companies, and they feel satisfied at the day because they've solved someone's problem. If you can't provide a solution, you've just got annoyed people with an escalation email.
Yeah. It is quite interesting, that whole idea around not having any complaints. In our industry, when a settlement is due and things aren't happening the way they should to be able to settle the next day or whatever it might be, and that kind of, I'll just lodge a complaint if you've got an issue with it. Yeah. No, let's just settle. Let's just actually get ready to settle the next day. Yeah. Oh, yeah, but lodge a complaint. No, let's just do what we were intending to do.
Nobody wants to lodge a complaint.
No.
Because that's just another process that you now have to take on. And no one wants to do it. No one ever complains. I mean, complaining is really hard. It's unpopular. Speaking to the manager is not cool. So,
so no wonder that 5,000 non-complaints. It's definitely not all of those people are satisfied. All those consumers are satisfied with the outcomes. They just couldn't be bothered doing anything about.
Because ASIC gives you, they give 30 days to come to an outcome, and if there's no other extensions granted. Superannuation is a bit more complicated. They give you up to 60 days. Some of these things draw out. The KPI inside companies is 30 days. But I don't know. Like, I think that's the biggest issue is the I don't want to draw this thing out. I don't want to drag it out. So we think our customer base are the ones who were the considerers or on the fence, who might just have a go, and it's cheap enough to just have a go, to try it out, to have a look and see, and they'll it's their only chance. Doing nothing is a zero, always a zero.
Do you find it crazy that 18 months ago, Womby didn't exist, and now you're here? Do you find that amazing?
Yeah.
We're not even in July yet. We did have that call, and then it's crazy. I
still pinching myself. Yeah, because we haven't started our companies before. I know he's started.
No, we've been learning as we've been going. Yeah. I mean, we're probably I'm probably got enough grey hair to start a company now. I've been waiting my whole life. I think it's just the confidence to get started was the biggest thing, and I think once we both talked ourselves into it, it hasn't been that hard. We're a free open service, which makes it simpler for us, right now.
Yeah.
Where to for Womby?
Well, I think we've got some pretty big aspirations. I think there's we feel as though we're nowhere near the precipice. I think we're kind of just getting started in terms of our footprint and impact on the thing as a whole. We're just excited to kind of play a kind of influential role. I think that's really what's driving us now. I think we kind of saw this thing early on as just like something that might be useful for people, and then as we started to build it and see the outputs and watch it all come to life, and other people have started to see it. I think that's been encouraging.
Yeah, it's just the confidence to keep going. So, there's always people telling you what to do. I think we've had plenty of conversations with people who tell us how to do something that have never done
or
it
how
before.
Not to do it.
Or how not to do it.
Why.
Or, there's something wrong with the way that you're doing it. And I was like, how do you know that? And they go, well, there just is. And I go, that's okay, that's wonderful feedback. So it's sort of, we've had to sort of filter out a bit of noise.
There's definitely something there, I think, in, like starting something new. Because I from my perspective, I feel like it is something new, like that doesn't exist across any sort of products.
No, we're first to market,
and I think some of the feedback that I had early on from some people was, well, if it was such a good idea, wouldn't someone have already done it? Like, do you really think you should be doing that? And there was a couple of times I was like, Dan, do you think are we crazy? Should we be like...
100% we should, because there's nothing else. It is literally the best thing ever. And I think it's that self-belief. It's that stupid self-belief, right? You have to have that unrelenting self-belief, and you have to kind of get up and face it. And I mean, John and I work full-time. We've got jobs and we have careers. And this is important to understand, is that this is part-time for us. This is at night time. This is on weekends. We sacrifice family and friend times and other hobbies to do this stuff. There's a lot that we've given up, but I think, at this stage of our careers, we've still got some spring in the legs. I think we're not going to get up and dunk or anything, but we can dribble up the court. I think we could hold our own, and I think we've happened on something that's, people love it. Like, people love the idea that you might actually go up against banks and insurers, and they're not the enemy. They're part of society. Like, everyone, that's it. It's a systemic thing. They are so important to the economy. Everyone's invested in them through their superannuation funds. Seeing a bank collapse is not the idea here. The idea here is that they think they too would want to serve the customer the best way. A bank or insurer will want to have a higher NPS than they have now, and they may be able to do that through dispute resolution. People may stay with them for the long run if they fix things. It's amazing what power that has when you can fix a problem. People feel so much better about their provider than they do than they started, because it was about how you recover. And so we think that we might enable some of that. So you ask us where we're going. I mean, this is a fairly scalable thing. So we've already started. We've got our models training on UK data. So the UK is similar, in fact, if not exactly the same, in terms of the way that you go from internal dispute to external dispute. The published decisions are very similar, except there's so many more of them. We've got, 250,000? Yeah. 250,000 determinations across all financial products and services. So that's big. So our machine is still chugging along?
Churning away.
It's still churning away. So we're still the model's still sitting there training and embedding everything. So on the back of that, we think that there's a play here in the UK, possibly Ireland, a bit smaller sample size. But these sorts of the banking insurance system, very similar, dispute system, very similar. So, and problem space, very similar. So, this is the world we're living in with AI and certainly with cloud-based software, is that for a very small incremental cost, we can scale out massively. So we can effectively go from a possible, 20 million customers to probably 60 to 70 with very little effort. And that's what we're scaling for.
What about the US? Is that a very different type of service?
Yeah, we would have loved the US, but...
Yeah, we had a look. It's so fragmented, I think, with all the different states and things like that over there. It was too messy for us, and
it's weird. There's lots of information, but it's all obscured.
Yeah,
and it speaks to the power of banks and large companies over there. That stuff.
A lot of smoke screens.
Yeah. It looks if you looked at it, you'd go, "Wow, this is this amazing comprehensive data," and then you start looking and you go, "Oh, at an individual level."
They had API,
there's an API all the technology there to kind of pull all the stuff in a way that we didn't have to deal with PDFs or anything like that. There was all the technology layers behind it to kind of use the stuff, but there was nothing in it. It all says customer decided not to publish, bank decided not to publish, the provider decided not to publish. So that because those laws exist, nobody publishes, right? Why would you? So there's nothing to benefit. There's nothing to benefit customers in that space, and it doesn't have the same. They don't have a fairness arbitrator. There's not that same thing.
And what's the feeling of satisfaction when you are actually helping a real person achieve a real outcome?
That's crazy.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, I think there was to find out. Well, I think that people have been using the service and they've actually gotten some positive outcomes. It's just been mind blowing. Like, to be honest, that we've kind of put this thing out there and is actually helping people.
John, we're on the car, and then he's like, John's got quite a special phone, which is really nice. It's big enough to be able to look at a database on his phone. Anyway, so he's sitting next to me. He goes, "Hey, did you submit something for this bank?" And I was like, because sometimes we did one or two tests, and I was like, no, we don't test on the live environment. And I was like, prod or is it the live thing is live? I was like, no, and he goes, "Oh my God, a customer." That was really early on, and I said, "Read it to me." So he's reading it to me in the car. I was like, "Oh, that sounds awful." I was like, "Yeah, that sounds really shit."
That was on our way to Fat Freddy's drop.
It was. Yeah, we're on our way to a concert.
I was at that concert.
Well,
well, there you go. Yeah, so we were on our way there, and then John's reading this out, and I was like, "Oh, whoa, a real person." I was like, "Amazing." Just one person, and it was legit. It was a well-written, well-articulated issue. They had results that came back and said, and we could see some of the results we'd given them back. And then, we also look at, what was their propensity to pay, how much time we would save them, and they had all the positive markers on it. So that's a real customer who's had a problem, got some results from us, has said, on the back of retrieving those results, has said, "Hey, I'd pay for this. You've saved me time and I'm more clear." There's no better feeling than that. And, that is somebody we'll never meet.
Yeah.
And that's so amazing.
It's so fulfilling.
Yeah. We'll never, ever know who that person is. And I love that part about it, is that we just don't need to know. All we need to know is we help them.
It would have been nice to kind of
get a testimonial.
close
Sure.
the loop.
Yeah, close the loop and just go, how'd you go?
But come back and give us
some
feedback.
That's not where we're at just yet. We don't need to know that. We're trying to. I mean, we're fairly certain. We're at the point where we can prove there's a market and that we've got good product market fit. We know that there's a societal problem, and that our product is sort of a bridge to kind of solve that. So we don't need to know who they are yet, and there's no other purpose other than to initiate a dispute for them, or through a letter that we'd probably collect that information. But until then, we just want people to use it.
So special. I know that feeling that you're talking about. It means so much, and it gives you a boost. And in those hard days or the dark times with it, you just think of that and go, "All right, let's keep pushing."
That radio interview that Dan did on ABC. We had been up because Dan was booked in for a chat on.
It was ABC Mornings.
ABC Mornings. Yeah.
It was peak radio, 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. This is where we started. We started prime time.
We'd been like wanting to push some changes to the site before the thing, and we had done some pretty early nights beforehand to get everything ready. And
because we were putting ourselves out there.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. We were literally, that was because it's fun until you actually tell the public to go look. Because we hadn't done advertising or anything like that. We're just building it and then putting it out in the wild to see what would happen. And then we did a few things on socials, and we're getting a bit of traction. But that really speaking to an audience as a person who owns this thing, saying, hey, this is us, this is what we do.
It had only been really kind of friends, that had kind of tested the site out. And
told
things
friends
like
and all that sort of stuff, that sort of organic growth.
Yeah.
But
But that was the first time I actually reflected on
this is real.
This is happening. And I nearly teared up, like when you
I was like,
you were introduced and talking. He was talking about everything that we'd done, and that's when I was thinking. Like I was actually remembering all the early nights and we had the journey from kind of that idea to.
I think we both realised we aren't screwing around. Like this is going to happen. We're doing it, and so good that you've invited us on to talk about it. Like we've spent so long, literally, we just talk to each other like this about this endlessly.
But how good is it you get to do it together?
Yeah, it's super. We get along super well, and the families are close and all that sort of stuff. So it's the John's kids call me Womby.
Big Womby.
Big Womby, and they're little Wombies, and they're so there's it's hilarious. But and that's the. Being co-founders, that's the biggest part of this, is that we will all through the start, middle, and end of it, we'll stay friends, and we know that, and that's a big thing for us both, is to know that we'll through the thick and thin. We're here at the hard parts, and I think the hard parts don't feel that bad.
No.
Not when you're sharing it, because I know all too well about how lonely it can be when you are doing the grunt of a business, way the business work.
Yeah,
it can be lonely, and it can be, and there's so much behind the scenes that people just don't see. And then when you do have those moments,
I think people don't understand. It has been hard. It really is hard. I think the speed is not a reflection of how difficult this has been. There's a lot of personal time invested in skills, and it's not for everyone. I'll say that it's not for everyone. You need some chutzpah to kind of to do this. And quite a bit of courage, and our combined 35 years in technology and data this is probably it. This is the culmination of that, is to kind of go, we understand how these bits of Lego fit together enough to build something, and it hasn't, by no means I'll say this is easy. All of it's difficult.
That's what makes it so
There's
much
no
more
free
fulfilling.
rides. There's no free passes. There's no free rides. The whole thing's a grind. Our friends are like, why are you doing this? You don't make any money. That's the best. That is our favourite question. Like, how is it a business if it makes no money? Is our favourite one. I'm like, let me just sit you down for a bit and we'll talk about data. So, for us, we're okay with it. I think it's being comfortable with the fact, and being bootstrapped is the best part, because we don't feel the pressure to generate revenue yet. We are getting all our homework done now, setting up a pathway to make revenue, but we're building customer trust first. We need to show ourselves and show our faces publicly, as we're doing today. We're just guys from the suburbs. We're fairly normcore as far as things go, and we'd happily sit down and talk to you on the phone if we had enough time and arms and legs, but we can't do that, so we have to give you software to use instead. And we think that's the next best thing, an empathetic voice that we can give people. So we're just having a go. We feel like we would have done ourselves a disservice if we didn't give this one a shot.
I can't wait to see where this goes as well. The whole idea for me is what you can achieve in that 6 months. What does 3 years look like for Womby? What does 5 years look like for Womby? That blows my mind about what's possible for anyone, but especially for this.
Yeah,
and I don't think we haven't focused on that, have we? It's more like, what does the next 2 weeks look like?
The world is moving. The world's moving at a crazy pace. Like, we're looking at VO3 videos from Google and just going, okay, That's strange. Like there's strange things afoot with the world of AI and technology at the moment. Things are moving at this crazy pace that people can't. A lot of people will talk about AI in terms of today, and a good friend of ours, Andrew Walker, has said that that's as bad as AI will ever be is today. If that's the worst example you've got, and you have to understand that it's hard to look back 3 to 6 months ago. And think about how the world was working and what's possible now. We're at a sort of critical point. I mean, fortunately for us, we've picked a very simple, basic, safe use case for AI. We are not generating video and customer service agents and pretend people. We've picked something that's fairly institutional and boring, and we're rocking pretty hard with that at the moment.
I love it.
We've got about 3 chords that we can play in AI right now. We're playing all of them.
It's great. And I always finish these chats around being proud of ourselves, because we don't champion enough in this country for people that are having a real go and trying to be something. So on that note, what are you really proud of especially in this space?
In terms of the AI, like professionally, I think the commitment and motivation to keep at it. I think we could have very easily have packed it in, or not kind of seen it through, because there's no one there, kind of with a whip telling us what to do, and it was really just our kind of own personal grit that helped us see it through to the end, so yeah, I'm like super proud of our ability to do that, and to ignore kind of all the negative noise and things like that I think a lot of people would succumb to. I think in trying to start up a company or a business or a new idea. There's always people that are going to be, and with good intentions, I think. Yeah,
they're always looking out for your best.
Yeah, trying to maybe convince you maybe not to do something, and you've kind of got to be really careful about who you surround yourself with and what kind of advice you take on board.
Yeah, I think it's a take no prisoners approach that we've got, and we certainly don't ask people for permission. And I don't think we're not even trying to seek forgiveness either. But I think it's down to us going, well, this is our thing, our idea, our concept, our product, and it's ours. And we have all the decision making function, and that is hugely empowering for both of us to be able to go, should we do this? Yes, I think we should. And there's no one to say that we can't. And that's a rare luxury for anyone, to have that sort of level of autonomy over designing, building, doing things. I mean, the day of work is complicated for most people, where you might have a great idea, but there's layers and layers of things to get through to get it to even exist or become a reality, and that might take you a year, 2 years, a whole career, who knows. So that sort of, we've ticked a box in that sort of, hey, we can make something happen, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. That's okay. So we feel fairly safe to fail on this one. I mean, we do put pressure on each other, because I just go, hey, John, we're going to be on the radio, or we're going to do this. And he's like, oh, my God. So that's the artificial pressure we create. But the pride comes from, having something that's real, that's out there, that people are talking about. I mean, it's amazing. And it does no harm. It's just literally there for good. And, certainly my son, I don't know if I was on the radio, and he's like, yeah, that's cool. We were talking about it as we were walking around the lake, and then a few months later I was like, hey, that thing's real, and and then I showed him something, and we're in business news. I think John and I, getting into business news is a bit of that's a flex, because being in a big glossy print is a big deal, and it was a cool photo that we got to take on the terrace, and it was very kind of Charlie to have that conversation with us and publish us. So,
and we nearly look the same height.
Yeah, I know. John's like, oh my God, I'm so tall.
I know the photo you're talking about, and you do look the same.
Wasn't true of our other photos, but yeah, that's right. So yeah, those things they have meaning in a small town like Perth that has a lot that has a lot of meaning, and it was. And that's, I think we felt courageous enough to put ourselves out there. We feel absolutely proud of the product that we've got. We stand by it, and we're happy to continue working on it. But I just think it's an amazing journey for us as friends, and now as business partners. I think it's fantastic for us.
Yeah, Oh, well, I've loved today. I feel it's a space that we don't look at or understand enough about. And when Catherine said, let's do this, I thought, this is amazing, let's do it. So thank you for coming in. I can't wait to see where Womby goes in the future.
Yeah, we'll have to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could like, comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.